Yep.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
It's lovely. I'd like to thank the Hollywood Lighting Centre. Good job. Yeah, get the credits up.
Preschool. That is a brag. Wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was nice.
Whoa. Yeah.
I mean, as you say, Jack's hard to live up to. Like, even I look at stuff like that.
Can we throw a couple of questions? Sure. Can we all just have a couple? I'm sorry. Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Queensland. Good afternoon, Townsville. It's wonderful to be back in Townsville, and our first Cabinet meeting of the year has just concluded. First of all, we'll give a health update on COVID, and then we'll talk about other matters. But today, in good news, only one new case, and of course that person was in hotel quarantine. We only have 12 active cases in Queensland and 4,638 tests in the last 24 hours. So it's wonderful to see that people are still going out and getting tested. So just remember, any symptoms, please go and get tested. Well, today I was very fortunate that the Cabinet had Dr. Young come to address Cabinet about the rollout of the vaccine program. Of course, this is absolutely we're still waiting on the supply to come in from the federal government. So we need to see that supply first, but we're getting ready. We're getting ready in Queensland to make sure that when the supply does come in from the federal government, that we can proactively get out there and of course deliver those vaccines. And they will be over a staged process. It won't be everybody getting it all at once, but of course Townsville will be one of the major cities for that distribution of that vaccine. So look, I'll hand over to Dr. Young and to Yvette to say a few words, and then we'll move on to other issues. Thanks, Dr. Young.
So one new case in Queensland overnight, a gentleman in his 20s who returned recently from Sweden, and he was in hotel quarantine. So we have those 12 active cases. And thank you yet again to all of those Queenslanders who came out in the last 24 hours, many with very mild symptoms, which is great to see, who got tested. That's so important we keep that going as we roll out our vaccine program. So once the Commonwealth has secured those supplies of vaccine, we'll be able to roll them out immediately in Queensland. All of that work has happened. Our first 6 hubs will be in our major cities that are at the highest risk of having any cases, because that's where our international border entry comes through. So Cairns, here in Townsville, in the Sunshine Coast, in the Gold Coast and in Brisbane, both North and South Brisbane. So we will start there with our first 6 hubs. Then, as we get those newer vaccines that can be distributed more easily because they don't need to be managed at those very, very low temperatures as the Pfizer vaccine does, we'll be able to spread that vaccine out throughout the state. And we're very, very good at getting people vaccinated in Queensland. We do it every single year with the flu vaccine. We do it with children very effectively. So once we get those other vaccines, we'll be able to enable every single person who's 16 years of age or over to be vaccinated, which will be excellent. Thank you.
How long do you expect the rollout altogether to take?
It depends when we get the vaccine. So we know from the Commonwealth that they expect to get the first doses of the Pfizer vaccine towards the end of February, so we hope to be able to start vaccination then, end of February, early March, and then as we get those other doses of additional vaccines, as soon as we get them, we've got the systems in place to rapidly get them out, but it really depends when we get the vaccine.
And the 6 hubs in outback in places like Outback Australia, will frontline health staff, will they have to wait longer than people in the
So the first rollout will be to those who are most at risk of getting the virus. So that's our quarantine hotel workers and our healthcare workers who are looking after those active cases. So we've had up to 30 active cases at a time spread around the state, so we'll really concentrate and make sure that those frontline healthcare workers get it. Then the next group that will be vaccinated will be the most vulnerable. So that'll be aged care and disability care residents and their carers, so the healthcare workers in those 2 sectors. They'll be the next group. Then gradually, as we get more vaccine, we'll roll it out further to people most at risk, so it'll always start with the most at risk, so that's older people, people with chronic disease. Then gradually all adults will be offered that vaccine. And then at the end, when all adults have been vaccinated, depending what the evidence says about children and when the trials have been done, we'll then look at children.
What sort of time frame are we looking at here, Dr. Young? Over a span of months, years?
It depends on when the Commonwealth can get the vaccine. They've done a really, really good job to date in terms of their agreements for the Pfizer vaccine, and we know that we'll be able to get 10 million doses for the country by the end of the year, so that's very good. Then they've got agreements with other vaccine providers, so there's the AstraZeneca agreement for up to 53 million doses, but that vaccine has not yet been approved by the TGA, the Therapeutic Goods Administration, so we need to wait for that approval before we can work out when those doses will start flowing.
Townsville's had 3 positive tests of COVID in the sewage in the last month. Should people be concerned about that, or is there something that we should be doing additional to what we already are?
Townsville people have been fantastic in coming forward and getting tested. That's really, really important. We know that sewerage positive results means that there's virus that's come from someone who's shedding. What we don't know is whether that's an acute case or an old case, that someone has come into Townsville, for instance, who's been elsewhere in the state or come from elsewhere and they're recovered but they're still shedding. The most important thing to do is, if you've got any symptoms, no matter how mild, don't assume that it's something else. Assume it's COVID until proven otherwise. So come and get tested. You'll get that result in most cases within 24 hours, and that'll reassure you, and it means that we'll know whether or not there's any virus in the community. So people shouldn't be alarmed because there's been positive sewerage testing. They should just understand that that could be old cases, but it could also be a new case. So just come forward and get tested, any symptoms at all.
How's the rollout going to be, how's it going to work for remote Indigenous communities?
Right. We won't be rolling out the Pfizer vaccine to remote Indigenous communities because of the requirement to store it at minus 70 degrees Celsius. We'll be rolling out one of the other vaccines, most likely the AstraZeneca vaccine, and it needs to be stored between 2 degrees Celsius and 8 degrees Celsius, which is the same for most of our vaccines that we use. So our First Nations communities are very, very, very good at vaccinating. They have some of the best vaccination rates in Queensland, so I'm very confident they'll be able to roll out one of those other vaccines very effectively once it's available.
Do you foresee any other challenges with rolling out that vaccine across the state?
No, I think it's a standard vaccine that people are very experienced at being able to use. One issue with it, of course, is there will need to be 2 doses. There'll need to be 1 dose and then 4 weeks later a second dose of that same vaccine type. So it's important that we have all of those processes in place so people come back for that second dose. So that's a bit different to how we usually manage vaccines. So the flu vaccine, for most people, you only need that 1 dose. So that'll be an additional complicating factor, but I'm absolutely assured that it'll be fine, that our systems are in place so that we can manage that.
In regards to the proposed quarantine camps in Toowoomba, just a question from that part of the state, what have you made of the proposals so far?
This is to change the model of quarantine. There are some discussions that are happening that will be worked through.
There are some calls for Toowoomba locals to be in the first phase of the rollout if the camp goes ahead. What would you say to that?
We've already had those discussions with the Commonwealth, and at the moment we've sorted out 6 places to roll out that Pfizer vaccine. We can always work with the Commonwealth if there is a reason for us to change those.
All right, we might move on to other issues now. Thank you. All right, so I might grab a couple of ministers and Aaron. Okay, so it's great to be back in Townsville, and we've got some good news for Townsville. Of course, we're standing here at the Queensland Country Bank Stadium, a very proud investment of our government into this community, over $190 million, and it was a great opportunity too because many of the Cabinet Ministers haven't seen the final product. So we're very proud of this world-class facility that's here, but we're also very proud that we now need more people to work here. So the call is going out today for 600 new jobs. So whether you're a chef or whether you're working in security or whether you're a cleaner or a bartender, we want you to come and work at this stadium. So the applications are now open. 600 jobs are needed, and I can't think of a better place than wanting to be right here at this stadium. And of course it's needed at the times when there are going to be different events. We're looking at attracting more world-class events here as well to the stadium. Of course, people came out to watch Elton John. I'm quite sure we're looking at a few extra ones over the next coming 6 to 12 months. And of course, we have the NRL All-Stars coming here as well. So we'll be looking forward to hosting that on the 20th of February. So if you're looking for a job, 600 jobs on offer, and make sure you come along. So I'll get Minister Hinchcliffe to say a few words. We've got Scott here, Aaron and Les, and then we're happy to take some local questions first, and I'm quite sure you've got some Brisbane questions as well.
Thank you, Premier, and isn't it fantastic to have this announcement today around those 600 jobs available for people to come and work at this fantastic North Queensland icon now, Queensland Country Bank Stadium. This is genuinely the place where all the excitement can happen for so many different people in our community, and it's exciting to have those work opportunities for people to be part of that story as well. Even with the impacts of the global pandemic, in the past 12 months we've seen this stadium see 90,000 people through the turnstiles at various events across the spectrum of the rugby league events, the Horn Zoo fight, the Elton John concert. But this year we will see so much more. with particularly having what we hope will be a successful NRL season for the North Queensland Cowboys. But that does start, as the Premier's made mention of, with the great opportunity of having the All-Stars game, the NRL All-Stars game here on the 20th of February, a great way to kick off the program for this great stadium for this coming rugby league season. But, as I say, to make that work, to make it be the wonderful welcome that so many people want to enjoy, we need the people to serve and support those patrons. So 600 jobs available. That wouldn't be possible without the commitment that we as a government made to delivering this fantastic stadium, this wonderful asset for the community of North Queensland. I only recently had a chance to visit 1300 Smiles, revisit there, and this, putting the comparison between that stadium and this one here, shows how far we've come and what we've delivered for the Townsville community. But these jobs are just very much the icing on the cake.
In regards to the jobs, how many of those will be full-time ongoing jobs?
Well, in the main, they are going to be positions that are about catering for events, so they will be casual jobs. That's the reality of most of the jobs that relate to events, opportunities like this. But there'll be so many people I know who work in hospitality and other services across the region who this will come right at the right time to be able to supplement their opportunities and activities. But the more we see product here, the more we see the regular games, the more this can become a regular opportunity for people who are working in those fields right across North Queensland.
Thank you.
Well, this is great news on the jobs front, because we know that hundreds of jobs were created when we actually built this stadium here, hundreds of local jobs. And that was our commitment when it came to this great icon that we call the Queensland Country Bank Stadium. So here it is. Now's your opportunity to get into these jobs, because we continue to look at content that we can put back into the stadium. We'll all remember the Jeff Horn fight and how great that was. And who can forget the Elton John concert that really activated not only the stadium but our city. And that's why we built this stadium here. It was about activating the city. So now it's about creating those local jobs, 600 jobs, come here. We are the events capital, not only of North Queensland, the events capital of North Australia. You see some great footy, you see some great events, great concerts. Just across the train line is the V8s, another great event for us. We'll continue to deliver the entertainment hub here in Townsville for North Queensland and North Australia.
Well, I just want to thank the Premier for hosting Cabinet up here in Townsville. It's incredibly important that the regions are represented, and just this morning we had the Premier and Minister Grace over at Heatley High School looking at $13 million worth of work and over 300 jobs supported. Talk about jobs, you know, the background here of this fantastic stadium. Over 2,000 people were inducted through the gates when this was being constructed, so that really shows the impact. But you would have seen driving through the Centre of Excellence, something else that our government's backed in, and I think that's important. You know, the Cowboys will have their new home, it's more investment, more local jobs. But I'm excited about having the ministers here, because I can get meetings with the ministers. In fact, I've got one very shortly with a range of ministers on a number of topics. But of course, one of my favourites being Riverway Drive. That'll be later on this afternoon with Minister Bailey. But we've got ministers meeting with Townsville Enterprise, the Port and Sun Metal. So a range of interactions to make sure the community's represented, and we'll continue to advocate for more in Townsville.
Thank you. Now, this is very, very exciting news with 600 hospitality jobs on offer. We've heard that the hospitality section is doing it very, very tough after COVID, and it's important that we listen to those people. What's really exciting that these jobs will appeal to those returning to university. They want real jobs on the ground, they want a choice. And I think this is one of those golden opportunities. Not only do we recruit 600 new personnel to work here, but a great training facility that will highlight the services and other venues who are looking for workers as well. So I thank the Premier and the Cabinet for being here. Like the member for Townsville just said, it's great to have the ministers here where we can drag them along and have a look at some of the issues that we want addressed here in the region. We will make sure that our message from this region is loud and clear. So thank you to the Premier and the ministers for coming here to North Queensland.
Thanks, Liz. Okay, any other Townsville-related questions?
Any key issues discussed in Cabinet today that you can share with us?
Oh, well, we went through, of course, we had the Dr Young brief us, and then, of course, we went through issues surrounding Townsville, and I made it very clear to the ministers that we made a lot of election commitments. We want to make sure that they're delivered. So there's a lot of infrastructure that's going to be built across Townsville. Of course, the water pipeline. It was an opportunity for Cabinet to go across all of those issues, and of course jobs is incredibly important to all of us, and that's why we're really pleased that these jobs are on offer at the Townsville Stadium here.
What about crime, Premier? That's a major
Sorry?
issue here. What about crime?
Well, we've got extra police coming here, an extra 120 for the region, and of course Aaron was just visiting a new facility that was promised during the campaign as well. So look, we acknowledge that that is an issue, of course we do, and that's why we are putting in more police, more frontline police, absolutely will be delivered here under my government as promised.
The Cabinet Australian crime proposal.
Well, for a start, that does not exist in any other jurisdiction, so I really can't see that one flying.
In regards to the cancer in Toowoomba, when do you expect?
Okay, so we've got no more Townsville questions. We're going to move on to other issues.
In terms of events,
I just want to make sure we talk about Townsville. We're in Townsville. We've got Townsville journalists here that want to ask questions.
just in terms of events in Townsville,
Yes.
are you confident we can return back to 100% capacity in some of the football games and things coming to the stadium?
Well, I think that under our COVID safe plan, that's exactly what we can do. So as long as we continue with our great track record, and of course we'll have to amend that if circumstances change. But we are talking to some pretty big names about coming here to the stadium, and hopefully we'll be able to announce those in the next couple of weeks.
How quickly can we expect some of those election commitments to be rolled out?
Well, some of them take planning, some of them take time to get them underway, but we actually have delivered, I think from last memory, over 96% of our last election commitments. So I'm very certain that every single minister is absolutely going to be making sure that the departments are delivering on those election commitments. And like we saw today at the high school, a brand new performing arts complex. That was a previous election commitment and delivered. So there's a lot of happy students there at Heatley High School.
It's been recommended that the Queensland Government act on stamp duty to help with North Queensland insurance issues. Is that something that the government is considering? And when will you respond to the ACCC report?
That's the matter for the Treasurer, so he'll be looking at that, but those insurance issues are usually the federal responsibility. So we do acknowledge that the premiums are high in regional Queensland, and anything we can do to put in submissions to the federal government, we will. Okay.
Well, I might segue into my next question, which is on Brisbane, just on the Climate Council report. I don't know if you've seen that one yet.
No, I haven't.
It basically just says that Queenslanders are paying double than other states following natural disasters and big climate events.
Well, I think Queensland's more prone to natural disasters for a start. Okay, we have fires, we have floods, we have cyclones. It's good to see that there was a cyclone watch up in the Gulf that's been downgraded now, but of course the Bureau will continue to watch that. We saw the enormous impact that the monsoonal event had here. That was going on 2 years now in Townsville, and what that did to the local community. I know a lot of people are still recovering from that. Cyclone Debbie wreaked havoc right across Queensland, if you remember, went down to northern New South Wales and ended up over in New Zealand. So, we are prone to more natural disasters, but we always build back better as well. So in terms of our infrastructure, when infrastructure is damaged through natural disasters, our motto is always to build back better.
So what's the government doing to tackle climate change and climate?
What are we doing? Well, we've got a 50% renewable energy target by 2030, and we are seeing a lot more investment in renewables, but we have very strong resource sector, we've got a very strong gas sector and a very strong renewable sector. In Queensland, we can do it all.
Just on Folk Island,
yes.
Is the state government looking at taking over?
Look, we're having very early preliminary discussions with the federal government. We've heard that New South Wales wants to abandon their responsibilities there, so we are very keen to have those further discussions with the federal government. And I think, as you heard today from Daniel Gershwind, he thinks that could add to our tourism portfolio. I'm going to have further discussions with the Tourism Minister as well, but it's something we're giving some careful consideration to.
Do you have projections on how much it could benefit the economy?
No, we don't have that at the moment.
When do you expect to make a decision on the quarantine cap?
Sorry?
When do you expect to make
Well, we're putting together a formal proposal that will go to the federal government. That should be going to them by the end of this week with a number of options. And of course, they were options that I discussed with the Prime Minister when we met at the end of last week.
Is that Calliope and Toowoomba?
Sorry?
Those two of the options, Calliope and Toowoomba?
There's a number of options being put forward.
Just on the Alexandra
I've discussed those ones,
Just on the Alexandra Hills incident yesterday.
Oh, yeah, it's shocking.
The 17-year-old was on bail for driving offences and recently convicted of up to 50 offences, including stealing cars and break and enter. Do you have confidence in the new bail laws released last year are actually working?
Well, let me say a couple of things. First of all, this is an absolute tragedy that two people going about their normal business just as we all do have lost their lives in such tragic and horrific circumstances. I really feel for their families and I express our deep condolences. In relation to your issue, there will be a full police investigation. I'm not going to be commenting on facts that I'm not privy to. I will leave that to the police to do so. But an absolute tragedy that a young couple have lost their lives in such horrendous circumstance.
Do you think you were tough enough on juvenile crime, and what is the state government doing to tackle juvenile crime?
Well, as I said, I'll let the police do that investigation. But we've toughened up on the bail offending rules.
When will you be making an announcement about borders reopening to Sydney?
We will be making that decision tomorrow. So I'll be taking advice from Dr Young and the Health Minister, and we'll be carefully looking at those issues. We said that we'd make the decision by tomorrow.
Are those bail laws tough enough, considering the 17-year-old was out on bail?
Well, they are very strict. The Parliament passed them. The opposition did not support them.
There's been 10 days of no community transmission in Sydney. What do you need to see to...
I'll be getting Dr Young's advice about that.
And what are you heading up to Cairns?
Yes, well, after here, it's a bit of a regional trip, so I'll be heading up to Cairns. As we know, Cairns and Port Douglas, another big tourism destination, has been doing it very tough. So the Minister, Sterling Hinchcliffe, and I will be travelling up to Cairns to meet with a range of tourism operators this afternoon. I think that's very important. We've already put around $60 million into supporting the tourism industry to help them recover from COVID. And I just want to get I just want to talk to them again about how they're going, what happened over the recent school holidays, and what more they think that we can do. The other big issue, I think, for Cairns as well is that JobKeeper ends. The federal government's JobKeeper program is going to be ending in March. I think that's going to have a big impact on Cairns and the people living in Cairns, and especially the tourism sector. So I'm very keen to talk to them about that and any further concerns that they have. So it's a good opportunity, once again, to sit down and listen to people on the ground and just hear firsthand how things are going.
Is there anything more that the state government can do to help these tourism businesses once that JobSeeker and JobKeeper do end?
Well, they're federal government programs, okay? So, you know, perhaps the federal government needs to look at some of those industries that are still feeling those big impacts from COVID. There are other industries that are going okay, that are bouncing back, but we do know that the tourism sector, especially in that Cairns region, the Whitsunday region, have been doing it very tough. So I'm very keen to hear from them.
Premier, just quickly back to
Last
the COVID
question.
quarantine camps, really quickly, just for Rockhampton. How confident are you your proposal will be well received in the end?
Look, I've just had preliminary discussions with the Prime Minister. I think you've got to put options on the table. This is about keeping Queenslanders safe. That's my number one concern. It always has been, it always will be. And what we know now is that the Northern Hemisphere is going through periods of lockdown where industries are not open, families are at home because of these dominant UK strain and other strains that are happening in the Northern Hemisphere. And with international flights still happening, there is a greater risk of people coming here with those variants. So it is about keeping people safe as much as possible. All I can do is put options on the table. It's up to the federal government to accept or reject those. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for coming.